what Uganda's internet shutdown reveals, according to Ibrahim Traoré. Hello, everyone, and welcome back. What does it mean when a country goes offline just days before a national election? Is it a technical precaution or a political signal? In the lead-up to Uganda's 2026 vote, authorities ordered a nationwide internet shutdown and halted the work of several civil society and media monitoring groups. The decision immediately raised questions far beyond Kampala. Soon after, a message attributed to Ibrahim Traoré of Burkina Faso circulated widely, framing the blackout as a warning sign, not only for Uganda, but for Africa's digital future. Tonight, we're not here to inflame emotions or repeat slogans. We're here to examine what internet shutdowns do to trust, transparency, and legitimacy during elections, and why leaders across the continent are paying close attention. This story is not about one platform, one candidate, or one country. It's about how power is exercised when visibility itself becomes a threat. Stay with me. Dear friends, internet shutdowns are not new, but their timing matters. When connectivity disappears days before ballots are cast, the impact goes far beyond inconvenience. Elections rely on information, reporting from polling stations, independent observation, rapid fact-checking, and citizens' ability to share what they see. Remove that infrastructure, and the public sphere narrows instantly. In Uganda's case, authorities framed the shutdown as a security measure. Supporters argue that temporary restrictions can reduce misinformation and calm tensions. Critics counter that the blackout did the opposite, undermining confidence at the moment it mattered most. Why? Because trust depends on visibility. When people can't see what's happening in real time, they fill the gap with suspicion. When independent observers are restricted alongside a blackout, the absence of evidence becomes the story. And when the state's own channels remain online while others go dark, the information field tilts decisively in one direction. This dynamic has a name in political analysis: perception management. It's not about changing votes directly. It's about shaping what can be seen, recorded, and questioned. In the digital era, that often means controlling bandwidth rather than broadcasting. Across Africa, this pattern has appeared repeatedly. Elections approach. Tensions rise. Connectivity is limited. The official narrative continues through state media, while independent voices struggle to be heard. Authorities insist the goal is stability. Critics say stability without transparency is fragile. That context explains why a message associated with Ibrahim Traoré resonated so widely. The warning wasn't framed as an endorsement of any Ugandan politician. It was framed as a critique of a method using digital darkness to manage political risk. Traoré's broader political posture helps explain the reaction. Since taking power, he has emphasized sovereignty, self-reliance, and the idea that legitimacy cannot be outsourced or manufactured. In that frame, shutting down the internet before an election looks less like protection and more like insecurity. Consider the youth dimension. Young voters are the most connected and the most affected by shutdowns. They rely on mobile money, messaging apps, and live video not only for politics, but for daily life. When networks go dark, economic activity slows, information stalls, and frustration grows. In places where long incumbencies already strain credibility, a blackout can feel like confirmation of worst fears. This is where Uganda's opposition figure, Bobi Wine, enters the story, not as a savior, but as a symbol. To many young Ugandans, he represents a generational challenge to a system that has been in place for decades. Cutting connectivity during the campaign inevitably looks like an attempt to limit that challenge's reach. From the government's perspective, the calculus is different. Officials argue that social platforms can amplify rumors, provoke unrest, and invite outside manipulation. In their view, a temporary shutdown reduces risk. The problem is that elections are themselves a test of risk management. When authorities choose darkness over openness, they trade short-term control for long-term doubt. The issue deepens when monitoring groups are restricted alongside a blackout. Observers, local and international, serve as witnesses. They don't decide outcomes, they document process, remove them, and even clean procedures struggle to persuade skeptical publics. As analysts often note, credibility is not declared, it is earned through verifiable steps. Traoré's message, as circulated, placed Uganda's blackout within a wider African conversation about digital sovereignty. Who controls networks? Who decides when they go dark? And what safeguards exist to prevent that power from being used for political advantage? In the Sahel, leaders have argued that sovereignty includes control over critical infrastructure, financial, security, and digital. But control cuts both ways. If used to expand access and resilience, it strengthens legitimacy. If used to narrow visibility at critical moments, it weakens it. International reactions add another layer. Responses to shutdowns often depend on geopolitics. In some cases, blackouts trigger sharp condemnations. In others, they are labeled internal matters. This inconsistency fuels cynicism. Citizens notice when principles are applied unevenly, and cynicism is corrosive to democratic norms. For American audiences, the lesson is not to choose sides in Uganda's politics. It's to recognize a global trend. Elections are increasingly shaped by information architecture. Control the cameras, the connections, and the observers, and you influence how outcomes are perceived, even if ballots are counted. But perception is not destiny. History shows that legitimacy built on restriction is brittle. Over time, societies demand openness. Leaders who trust their mandate tend to invite scrutiny. Leaders who fear scrutiny tend to restrict it. The choice between those paths often defines political eras. Traore's warning also carried a regional message. When one country normalizes pre-election blackouts, others may follow. When the method spreads, so does the problem. Conversely, when transparency is protected, it sets a standard that neighbors feel pressure to meet. There's a practical dimension too. Blackouts have economic costs. Mobile payments pause, small businesses stall, essential services slow. Even brief shutdowns can ripple through daily life, costs that fall disproportionately on ordinary people rather than political elites. So what's the alternative? Governments can invest in resilience instead of restriction, rapid fact-checking, transparent communication, independent monitoring, and clear rules that protect connectivity during elections. These steps are harder than flipping a switch, but they build trust rather than draining it. For Uganda, the 2026 blackout will be studied long after votes are counted. Analysts will ask whether it reduced tension or simply postponed it, whether it protected legitimacy or undermined it, and whether the costs outweighed the control it provided. For Africa more broadly, the episode sharpens a question many countries are already facing. Can elections remain credible when the public sphere goes dark? Uganda's blackout may have been temporary. Its implications are not. The path forward, across Africa and beyond, will be judged by whether leaders choose openness over control, confidence over fear, and transparency over darkness. Thank you for watching.